Welcome to Full Throttle Talk, the podcast where horsepower meets conversation. From supercars to classic legends, high revving tech to motorsport mayhem, we cover it all. Straight from the driver's seat, whether you're a gearhead or racer or just love the thrill of the open road, you're in the right place. Buckle up, hit the gas, and let's go full throttle into today's episode. Welcome back to Full Throttle Talk. It is your weekly favorite automotive podcast. And as always, I have my wonderful co-hosts, Paul and Greg, and we've got a really great agenda for all of you today. It's been a very exciting week in the automotive worlds, guys. And I always like to start out by wondering where your minds are at, what you are focusing on, what are the top stories or headlines that have grabbed your attention in the past week that you think will be of interest to our listeners. And by the way, today we're answering some listener questions, and we're drilling down and focusing on a lot of things that we know are going to be relevant to all of our fellow automotive enthusiasts out there. But like I said, guys, let's start out by talking about what were the top headlines that really grabbed your attention in the last week automotively.
Paul, you go first.
Well, I've been on a 10-day rally, so I have been disconnected from the world. I got back late Saturday night. Sunday was a holiday, but I worked all of that. So I have been kind of out of the loop with the automotive news. I've just literally been trying to keep my car running for the last 3,000 miles, including almost hitting a cow, damaging wheels, scrambling to find something to keep moving on. So it's funny, when you're on a rally, I just don't check the news. I don't connect with, just the little connection I do is with just work stuff and the cars that we're selling and representing. So I'm a bad person for the news this week because I have no idea if the world still exists besides my own car world.
Well, maybe that's the only world that needs to exist is your car world. That sounds like a pretty good car world. I mean, I enjoy visiting with it every week, so not a bad place. Yeah. How about you, Greg? Anything from the auction worlds or anything that really surprised you headline wise?
Not necessarily surprised me, but I know like the tariffs do not have the impact that everybody was concerned they would. So that's obviously huge. We did announce like the first car for the Monterey sale, which is pretty special. It's a yellow F50. And I'm not a huge F50 fan. I mean, I'm really liking them now more than I ever did when they first came out. Now they're just like super special cars. And what's funny, and we talked about this on an earlier podcast, I noticed that some of these auctions, like if there's a red Enzo, I don't want red. I want the rare colors, the white, the blue, the black or whatever. So it'll be interesting to see what this F50 does, considering it's yellow. That is not the official Italian name, but it is beautiful in yellow. And speaking of yellow, Paul, you have a little Porsche behind you there. You put it on Instagram, the PTS. What's that color?
Champagne.
It was like champagne yellow.
Yeah, which I was doing the calculations last night. It was $1,100 paint to sample option, which, I mean, it was 1980, and the irony was that's about $5,000 today. Which, if you remember, paint to sample was from like early 2000s to 2015, before the 991.2, it was about $5,000. It wasn't till the 991.2, that's 2017, that the prices jumped to 15 grand. So that basically, says, okay, Porsche goes, supply and demand. That's part of the argument. But anyway, so that champagne yellow car, what's odd about it is whoever ordered this, you could have got Talbot yellow, Sahara beige, bamboo, and we're talking shades of gray. I mean, these colors are so similar. Talbot's a little brighter. So for someone to order, and it's mostly a one-owner car out of Utah, and for someone to order that color, it leads me to believe they either had one of these, like this color was from like the 356 era and the early 911, 912 era. So someone, I'm guessing, probably had the car in that color, wanted to relive that. It was worth the extra $5,000 in today's money to do it. So 85,000 miles. We just got it yesterday. It's getting steam clean on the underside today. I haven't even test driven it, but it is original paint, and it's hard to explain a car that hasn't, and I think, Tim, you've experienced this, I'm sure Greg has, that hasn't been altered, modified. It's as pure as you get, and you drive and you're like, oh, this is what they were supposed to be. This is what people drove Like you drive and you're like, oh, I could have daily driven this. It's had air from the factory, but someone's upgraded it to modern air. So I'm dying to see like how good it actually works. But I have a couple Southeast clients that would love for this car to have good working air.
Well, what's the price point? Like,
It'll be probably close to 100 grand. The owner of it is dropping off like a giant stack of records. I mean, it's got every Windows sticker, every I got to show this picture to you. So he sends me a picture of the guy who bought the car new and the delivery picture, and it's hilarious. It's just it screams. I don't know if this will show up. Let me see.
Yeah, it does.
oh, it did.
Yeah.
There it is. Yep.
There. Oops. So this is like 80s banker guy. Let me zoom in more.
Oh, yeah.
So look at that guy. That is 1980 picking up his new Porsche. He looks like he's ready to, maybe he works for Deloitte and Touche or something like that. And it's got a couple pictures of
Full on yuppie.
full on yuppie. I mean, the Windows sticker is like, I don't know if this will show up. The Windows sticker is like got creases where it's been folded in the book forever.
That's awesome.
It's awesome. I'm always excited to get these cars, and you think they're all gone, and then every once in a while, out of some.
Well, that's what's really remarkable. I 100% agree with you. A car like that's really special. But also every time I come across something like that, which is not that frequently, it always makes me a little sad, because when you see a car that's a time capsule like that and it didn't pass to a family member or something like that, somebody doesn't let a car go like that. I'm always in the back of my mind wondering why they're selling it. So it makes me a little tiny bit sad. But there also is an enormous responsibility of buying something like that, because you got to respect its history and you got to keep it original. And it's so much easier to want to, restore something or over restore something when things start to break, while you're in there type things. But with a car like that, that's going to be special forever if it goes to the right owner. And I'm sure you'll make sure that's true. Greg, I'm curious, what happened to the SC you were chasing? Paul and I were getting.
So I was asking about that champagne car, because somewhat selfishly, because the one I'm chasing is somewhat similar. I think yours has 82,000 miles. This one has like 56,000 miles, 58,000 miles. So I hope to drive it tomorrow. It has an issue, spacers. He's got to replace the rear tires and a battery, but I'm going to go after it. And I feel like I really need the listeners' input, because if you were to sell one of the two cars behind me, which one would it be?
Mustang.
Let's discuss that in a second. Anyway, so you guys, it's Gemini silver, Gemini gray, and it's Paul.
Well, let's talk about it. We won't. We don't. It's an
82 XC.
Yeah.
The guy bought it in 82 with like 2,000 miles on it.
Amazing.
He's had it ever since, and it's had one repaint because the side was keyed once, and so interior is original. I think it's paint to sample, because when I look it up, that color was only 72, 73, and 84, according to the website Paul hates.
Rainbow.
And then you saw the interior and you said that looked like, maybe a special color. It's like a dark orangish red. So the colors are outstanding. It'd be really cool if it was PTS. I know I'm color driven, so I love the colors on the car. He said it runs like a scalded dog. It's had a lot of servicing recently.
Hold on. It's a 3-liter. It's an SC. Okay. It might run like a scalded, not dog, something
Hamster.
else. Hamster. Yeah. It's a
for the
scalded
period,
hamster. A fat hamster.
For the period. And so I'm hoping to make an offer on it. This is a situation where a friend of mine was getting a quote for a security system, and he's like, "Hey, do you know anybody that can help me sell my Porsche?" I'm like, and she referred me. So I'm like, all right, sweet. So we'll see.
Well, that's a sweet car. So guys, let's debate this. Original paint for Paul's champagne yellow one versus the Gemini gray car. Original paint, Paul, in real world, how much does it matter? And miles, yours has got twice as many miles. You're asking 100 grand. I know Greg's dancing around with something that's significantly less price wise. On paper, it looks like the miles on Greg's car, but it's been repainted. Yours is original, but it has double the miles. How would you value that?
I mean, the end of the day, I've seen some original paint cars that don't add value because they need to be repainted. So when you go so far as saying, "Ooh, original paint," the idea is that it's in great condition, and condition is everything. So, for instance, we got Greg, 3 SCs coming in the next 7 days. One's here already, one's coming tomorrow, and one's coming maybe tomorrow also. But the other one we're getting is a 79 SC, rest of world, sunroof delete. It's a gray or silver, sports seats, 50,000 miles. It's like 70,000 kilometers. It's been repainted as most metallics. It's not, like I told you before, it wasn't a surprise that your car got repainted. Metallics just from Glasser of that era could not survive. But so this car is less miles, full rebuild, like every nut and bolt in the engine, transmission, suspension. It's probably going to be the same, price as this car. And you're like, okay, well, that's a more desirable car. But it really comes down, as you know, Greg, condition. This Bamboo car is insane. Like, yes, it's 80 some thousand miles, which is low-ish, but that car's never been parked for any period of time. It's been driven. It's got a giant stack of records going back to new. So odometer is as we talked about, and you reposted, odometer is a suggestion of original paint's a suggestion to condition. It's not an edict. In the end, I always tell people it just depends on the actual car. I would say if you're doing like the sports car market scale condition, I would say based on the pictures I saw of the one you're looking at, I would say that's a condition 2- ish. And I would say this one's a 2+ to 1-. It's insane how good it is. I mean, like the leather seats are perfect because the guy had the gnarliest. I'll post a picture on Instagram. The gnarliest gray, looks like it's from your grandmother's bathroom sheepskin seat covers.
Oh, yes.
And they're so ugly, but you love the people that do that because the interior is perfect. You could tell he put plastic mats over the thresholds, the rubber getting in and out, and the thresholds aren't all scraped up. The radio works, the dash is perfect. There's no warping. It's just like I tell people, like this car, I've sold 15, 20,000 mile SCs. This car looks as good, if not better. So just because the odometer's lower, it's, yours is a cool color. I really hope you get the car because I think once you annoyingly taste a Porsche and live with it, you'll be like, crap, why haven't I done this sooner?
Greg, how tall are you?
6 feet.
Okay, so you'll fit in that car, no problem. That was the one thing I was thinking about that,
Is the sunroof delete more desirable than sunroof?
Yes.
Yeah, this one does have a sunroof.
In the Europe, well, it's not that big of a deal, but with SCs, but in the European car world, nobody likes sunroofs for some reason. People like to live in their own little introverted caves.
I mean, the whole sunroof thing is hilarious. It's so probably American. We want what we can't have. So early long hoods, 356s rarely came with a sunroof. So if you get one with a sunroof, it's worth more. By the time you get to the SC era, everything for the US, it was an option. Even if you didn't order it, I've talked to people who worked for Porsche at that time. They would go, Fuchs, the Fuchs wheels and the sunroof were optional. If you didn't order it, Porsche factory would just add it on going, oh, it's an American. They probably forgot to add it. And I've known people who ordered sunroof deletes, got the sunroof, and Porsche was like, take it or leave it, which sounds like our Italian friends.
Since we're talking about Porsches and we're going to stay in the old Porsche world, hopefully we're not boring people too much. And we are going to be talking about different things today. Let's talk about, this is actually a conversation I had when I was buying Magnus Walker's Slate Gray 67S from him back in, I don't even remember what year, 2009 or 10. We are talking about the different transmissions, and people, it drives me crazy. I don't know about you guys. When you see a 911 advertised as a G50, like, G50, it's a 5-speed transmission. And if you drive any of the Porsches where the bushings are in good shape and someone's actually maintained, like your tan car there, or the champagne car, if that thing's been maintained and that's a 915 transmission, it's going to feel every bit as good as a G50. So, I mean, as far as a 901, 915, G50 transmission, and then their 356s have their own number sequence, what would be the differences that you would necessarily feel? And I know Greg's not going to, he'll have to sidebar this one, but Paul, what do you think?
I think social media and other things over the years have promoted G50s because they're stronger transmissions. I think they test drive better. So if you haven't driven an old Porsche and you drive a G50, it's easier to drive. I always say they're not my favorite. 915s and 901s are my favorite. And if Porsche really made a crappy transmission, the 915 was in the 73 RS, and it survived for what, from 72 to 86. I mean, that's a long time for Porsche to be putting a crappy transmission in their car. I love the 915 because I think it forces you to drive better. But I think the G50 sadly has gotten this big thing because I ask people all the time because they'll say, "Hey, I want a 87 through 89 Carrera." And I ask them knowing the answer, "Why do you want that?" "Oh, it's a G50 transmission." "What do you know about the G50?" "Oh, it's stronger and it lasts better and it's easier to shift." I said, "Well, yes to both. For sure, yes to the latter. But by the way, that's now a 30-year-old."
Well, but let's talk about why. Okay, so the G50 was a hydraulic, and then the other ones weren't. And so basically, go ahead.
Yeah, what basically Porsche did by the time they got, and I think this was the beginning of Porsche being in financial trouble, trying to outsource some stuff, they figured they don't want to build transmissions. So they hired Borg Warner to do the synchro mesh system. And so the G50s are easier to shift. They're way more heavy duty, but they also weigh a lot more. And you've
Yep.
got rotating mass that, so like if you rely on what I call the butt dyno, and you drove an SC, and let's just say they were magically the same exact condition, as close to new. You drove an SC and you drove a G50 Carrera. Even though the SC is rated at 180 horsepower, the G50 is at 217. Your butt dyno would say the SC is faster. And that's because the SC is a short stroke motor. It revs really quick. It doesn't have the top end horsepower, but guess what? 90% of our driving doesn't use the top end horsepower. I think, I always say that if you really have to have a G50, you're a lazy Porsche buyer. So why don't you just go get a 993 or even one. But
Don't get Paul started on 993s. He's going to start talking about how that's when
No,
Porsche's making Camrys, and oh my gosh, here we go.
So can we just make this the 1982 911 SC edition podcast, because I have one more thing to mention. So we have one. Sotheby's has a May online sale kicking off. I think it's May the 28th. And guess how many SCs we've sold at Arms Sotheby's? Not turbo, just basic SCs.
probably
Zero.
very.
Yeah, I
Oh,
remember.
Zero. Like
Yeah.
we sold a ton of Porsches, a ton of 911s, just an 82, zero. Well, originally I was going to try to get this Gemini into the auction. Well, guess what? There's already one in the auction. So
I'm guessing a low mileage car.
Yeah, I'm
it's
sure.
like an unrestored 13,000 mile original owner car. Yep.
So
And,
I mean, I joke about the SCs. They're kind of the cockroaches of the 911 world. I mean, and I say that in
why they never die? Is that what it is?
No,
Well, they never die, and they made a lot of them.
don't die. You can drive an SC broken. I've seen clients driving with broken head studs for years. I mean, like they will just soldier on. They're so reliable. Doesn't mean they're impervious to repairs, but they can just drive broken. So you'll see SCs with hundreds of thousands of miles. I mean, that was really, I would say, the first 911 that was really robust and could go a long time. Because the mid-year cars were 50,000 mile motors. Long hoods, you'd be lucky to get to 70 to 100,000 miles before they just puke oil everywhere. But the SCs were this aluminum case, and they were really well built. They weren't impervious. They had issues with head studs. They'd blow air boxes, and they didn't have oil-fed chain tensioners. But a lot of people would fix those things over the years. So as a result, SCs were just workhorses, and they were driven and driven and driven. So to find a low mileage preservation SC is significantly harder than finding a G50. There's lots of G50 Carreras because people knew that was the end of the line. They were no longer buying them as daily drivers. So that's part of the reason. I've sold 2 low mileage SCs. I rarely sell SCs because generally they are kind of worn out and they're not worth enough for the time to deal with it, which is I'm sure is RM Sotheby's issue with selling them. So very hard to find a low mileage one.
Well,
But they're
let's
great.
try to move past Porsches. I'm sure we'll swing back that direction. And oh my gosh, when Greg gets that SC, this we're just gonna have to rename the show.
Okay, so no more
Well,
Porsches. I'll
can you
see you
tell me?
later.
Yeah. So, can you tell me, Paul? So here's the thing: if I got to sell one of the two cars behind me, I know Tim's about the GTO. So here's the pros and cons. They're both V8 front engine, rear wheel drive, 60s manual cars, but they're He's just, you guys are going for the same car.
No, but
Why do you hate
none of that.
Mustangs?
None
Why
of
do you hate Mustangs?
what it is doesn't. No, I appreciate it. What it
He's
is
trying to
doesn't
sell you
matter.
one. Don't you get it, Paul? He wants to sell you
Yeah, I
a
don't
car.
want to buy
Y'all
one,
need to
but
do a deal. Bro
in
wants a
the end,
911.
in the end, and this is a question only you can answer. I mean, you can use us as a sounding board, but if it were me, I'd look at how many miles I've driven on one versus the other. And
Hmm.
sentimentality is lovely, but it doesn't really end up being the great decision.
But
It's what
let
you're like driving.
we have a lot of people who listen to us strictly on audio, so they're not watching us on video. So the choice is, Greg, that you're trying to choose. If you were to sell one of them, what
Okay,
are the choices?
let me
Yes.
set it up here. So,
Yeah.
unrestored 66 Pontiac GTO, gold on gold, special ordered, crazy story on Jay Leno's garage, unrepeatable unicorn, preservation car, which makes it a little nervous to drive, right? I don't want to get issues with it. Drives great. Mustang, old pair of jeans, 65, blue on blue, hypo fastback, most powerful Mustang of the year, rare exhaust, paint chips, door dings, can drive the wheels off of it without any care in the world.
Your answer is the Mustang you keep. That's it.
Really? You're going to keep the Mustang, sell the Pontiac?
I can tell by the inflection in his voice. If we hooked him up to monitors, that's his true love. The other one he loves because of what he thinks it is or what it
Oh,
represents.
that's a good point. It's a
At the end
collector
of the
car thing. Yep.
it's just his ingrained collector card. It's the RM
Uh-huh.
Sotheby's kind of coming out of his pores, and he's started talking in that language. But the reality is, if you sold the Mustang, you would spend hours looking at an empty spot in your
No,
garage.
the 911 is going to go there. That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to replace one of them with that
Oh
SC.
yeah. But I just think the end of the day, for most people, no matter what they say, if you don't have something that you can just jump in and drive that will bring you smiles, there's only so much excitement you can get looking at a car. And you've got to drive it. And it sounds like the Pontiac is really cool, but you don't enjoy driving it because of the rarity and the originality and other things. And I think you want to drive. Or at least maybe
I
that's
am a
me
driver. Yeah,
projecting what I do onto you. But
I am a
keep the
driver.
Pontiac drive. In 50 years from now, will it really matter? You know,
Yeah, I go back and forth because I'm like, well, the Mustang's easier to replace, right? Because you can always find a hypo out there. So,
Well, I mean, let's be super tacky, and you're the auction guy. What's the values? What's the trends on both of those? I'd have to think because hypothetically, the Pontiac, because of what it is, will, and this is going to make Paul cringe, but it's probably going to appreciate more over time, thus offsetting the costs on the SC that'll be inevitably coming your way. Because Porsches are not cheap to maintain. I mean,
yeah.
so there's that, if you care.
Yeah, the Pontiac really needs to go to a guy who's looking for the special cars. He's tired of flipping stuff. He just wants a collection that's really, each car has a great story. That's it doesn't need to go to some guy that's just going to do burnouts down at the Whippy Dip. you know. But yeah,
Whippy dip.
it is worth more than twice what the Mustang's worth. So
Well, I mean, there you go. I think Paul read your mind because you seem to be sort of resolved with his coaching there. So that was interesting. Damn, Paul, you should open up a little side hustle, where you're going to read tarot cards and read people's palms.
so
no,
I
I
do
tell people to come in and lay on my couch and tell me what their mother drove.
so I do have I do have another option. The other option is to sell it to a buddy of mine, basically at my cost. He'll restore the car and I'll get it back to him at his cost, like in 3 years. So I'm like, oh, I could get dibs on it and have it restored. And so we'll see. I don't know.
That's interesting. Let's move on. All right, let's move on. So let's hop on our, it seems like always our favorite topic. Let's look at Bring a Trailer. There has been some interesting sales that have happened, and I really see this continuation of I think maybe it's just me, but I really see a shift happening in the collector car market that I'm not in the industry full time, so I'm not really completely understanding what I'm seeing. But what I do seem to be picking up on, you guys will tell me if I'm right or wrong. There seems to be more of a movement. Well, I'm not going to fill in the blanks. You guys just tell me what your favorite or what you thought surprised you the most, either as well sold or well bought on Bring a Trailer in the last week. It could be one or two cars. And I see you guys are both looking at your favorites on Bring a Trailer, just as I am. I have like 100 favorited, like favorite every third car. All of a sudden I find myself having an interest in 1950s Chevy pickup trucks and seeing what they're worth. But Paul, you go first. What have you seen as far as a well sold or well bought that sort of maybe raised your cackles?
Well, this has been, it's not a specific thing, but I have noticed there have been more engines lately turned into coffee tables. Uh, and I'm looking at the prices of those and I'm like, crap, that engine, that Viper engine turned into a coffee table is worth more than some cars. And I didn't even think it was particularly attractive. And I don't know what the whole movement is for coffee table engines, which are basically a great way to recycle something that you're never going to put into a car. That's not great. So that has been my big observation, and I don't understand where that's coming from. But I don't know if you guys have noticed recently how many engine coffee table. I mean, like every day there's like one or two engine coffee tables being sold.
There's two or three guys that I clicked through one of them and to see what the story was. And there's two or three guys that have just started hobby businesses, and that's what they do. And so it's kind of cool, like guys in their 20s and their 30s that are, have little hobbies. And that's so, yeah. One
But
guy
would
had a
you
really,
spend 10 grand for one of those?
I mean, no, I wouldn't, but I'm not to say it wouldn't be cool to have if you had the space.
I mean, perfect example. It was I don't know, a couple weeks ago. It was a 928 motor, like my 928, like the least desirable 928 motor, like a 4.7 from like an early 80s, not the best motor they ever made. And it was 9 grand for the coffee table. And it looked okay. It's not the prettiest motor. It looked okay. But meanwhile, there was an 83 928 where that motor would go in that sold for 13 grand.
I got to go for one real quick second. I apologize.
And I was just sitting there going, you got to be kidding. Like, how is that the whole car, which, I watched the driving video, at least it drives versus this static thing. So I'm sure there's people out there that totally get that whole world of coffee table parts, but I personally, I don't get it. So
Cars, was there anything in particular? And I challenge you to find something you were watching other than a 911. I know I'm going to fail in that offering of a challenge.
There was it was a 911. Well, actually, the one car that was really interesting, because I swear I saw this car, when I used to go, before I was going to car shows or anything like that, there wasn't rallies in the 80s and 90s. My dad and I would go to the LA Auto Show. Like that was the big show. There wasn't Lufka there wasn't all these other events. And there was a car, I don't know if you saw it, it was the GM's Eldorado concept car, which I was shocked to see that it was kind of a regular boring car. But it was that orange, like prototype concept car. It looked it was a 99. It was very kind of that Budnick, Boyd Coddington vibe of the 90s, like if you owned it, you'd have tribal tattoos and I don't know.
Afflicted t-shirt. I get it.
Yeah, bedazzled jeans. It was just sort of this era that
you have big arms, but it's the only part of your body you work out
yes.
as I got it.
And it was sort of an era I wasn't too excited about. And it was this bright orange, but when you looked at the interior, it looked like kind of like a bottle of Ensure dumped all over everywhere. This gray, mucusy looking leather. It was actually one of the, if you look at it, it was one of the big sellers or popular listings. It had like 47,000 views. It's GM's Eldo, capital ROD, as in Rod, very clever. And it looked literally like it came out of Boyd Coddington's place. But I do remember seeing this at the LA Auto Show, and I'm pretty sure my reaction today was the same one my dad and I had, which is, who would ever buy that? But someone did.
So are you,
sold for 55 grand.
Are you proud of yourself for not having evolved over the decades, or are you just resolute in that you are who you are?
Probably the latter. I am who I am, and I don't sway by whatever's popular today. I mean, perfect example. I love 964s. I'm always bummed that now they're expensive because they used to be if you couldn't buy a 993, you bought a 964. And now everyone thinks they're great, and they are great, but are they 30% better than something else? No. I'm kind of bummed about that, but I still like them. So
Greg, what on bat really raised your eyebrows? What did you see sell, or was there any particular trend? Um, I always like having you guys on the show because Paul is more immediate. He's more urgent. He's more like what's happening now because he's dealing so much with real customers, and you're following trends. So you're having to look downrange of what the biggest seller is going to be this year at Monterey, or auctions cars that you might be attracting. So what did you see, or what are the trends that you're seeing on BAT or any particular cars that you thought were worth mentioning?
Honestly, have you seen the number of pickup trucks on BAT now? Like, we're talking classic pickup trucks, but then we're also talking like early 2000s. I mean, I think it's just a matter of people grabbing this last of a generation kind of cars and trucks. So I was really surprised by that. There's a couple of them I'm following. I'm curious to see what happens to them. You've got I think it's called a Speed Yellow Ford GT. That's one of the rarest colors on the Ford GTs, and that one's closing here fairly soon. 15,000 miles, higher mileage. But I'm curious to see what some of the stuff that's active right now. There's a Porsche Carrera GT on there. I'm really curious. I haven't seen a Carrera GT sell recently, not to go back to Porsche, but I'm curious to see what some of these higher dollar cars are doing. I know
Why? But Greg, why? There's something going on in the back of your brain that makes you curious other than just normal curiosity. Are you worried about something?
The Carrera GT was on a tear for such a long time, and it seems to have flattened out. And I'm curious to see where it is now. So it's really like we really haven't had a temperature gauge as far as the market. Obviously, it seems like everything's slowing down right now because of all the uncertainty, but now the tariffs, at least on classic cars, has been cleared up. And so I'm curious to see if the accelerator pedal's been hit a little. People are going after stuff now that they have clarity on the tariff aspect of it, or exactly how that affects things. I know for our Monterey, I can't say what they are, but we've seen some big consignments come in, some Ferraris and such, which will be really exciting to see when these cars are announced. And I don't think it's a need to sell situation. I think it's hey, it might be a good time to sell kind of thing. So I'm just curious to see what the big cars are doing and trend and market wise. I think the Audi R8, there was one that sold there recently. I thought was a decent price, and I think the V8 version is underlooked versus the V10. Everybody wants that V10, but I'd almost prefer the V8 myself. Anyways, yeah, a lot to look at. I probably need to look at BAT a little bit more. I don't, you know what? I tend to look at results from live or where I know the transaction occurred. I know majority of the transactions do occur on BAT, but I prefer, like, I use Hammer Price to do a lot of stuff, and BAT's not in that database.
Let's tell folks what we're talking about right now because they might not know that. So essentially, in case you guys didn't know that, and Bring a Trailer, they're just essentially like it's a love match. They're not actually facilitating the transaction. We mentioned this before in this podcast, but a lot of people don't know that about Bring a Trailer. It's actually, I think, a brilliant business model. All they're really doing is putting the buyer and seller together, and they make up to $5,000 just for doing that. And then after the auction closes, it's up to the buyer or the seller to do the deal, and they have no liability or no responsibility to have the transaction go through. So when you see something close on BAT or sell on BAT, doesn't necessarily mean it sells. That's what Greg was trying to describe there. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's actually up to 7,500 now.
Oh, is it really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you guys see they expanded to Europe too? I'd listened to their podcast, and I thought that was really exciting. If they can make it so that they can bring cars from Europe effortlessly or as most close to effortlessly as possible, that's a home run. What does the cost to bring in a car from mainland Europe? Do you guys know nowadays?
Well, the import, isn't it 2.5%?
Right. It's always 2.5%, but what's the actual boat ride?
So I would say a shared container from Europe to here is probably 8 to 10,000. Wow. You also have marine insurance. I would say if you're going to use a reputable carrier, bring it here. You're figuring $15,000 to $25,000 to get it here. Yeah, not including the import fee.
Greg, let me ask you a question. Are European sellers how do I say this? Do certain cars, European cars, sell better in Monterey? Is like Monterey the center of the universe when it comes to annual global car auctions? Are a lot of the cars that you guys are selling with Sotheby's RM, are those, you know, collectors in Europe primarily, or just a little bit of both? If I have a really rare Ferrari, am I going to try to sell it in Europe, or am I going to get more money selling it in California?
We have a lot of folks. I won't say numbers. If I had to guess a percentage, it would be a total guess, but I would guess like maybe 15% of the cars in Monterey are from overseas. We do have cars that come from overseas specifically for Monterey, but obviously, those are typically much higher dollar cars where, you know, 8 to 10 grand to get it over here is a drop in the bucket when you're talking about the, prospective sale price. So that would have affected us significantly if the tariffs obviously stood on collector cars. Yeah, so I don't know the exact numbers, but I know that, yeah, we do have some that are shipped over specifically for the Monterey sale.
What percent of the cars, the high-end cars in particular, because I know this happens at Mecum a lot, the answer to my question, but what percent of the cars are being restored and essentially sold just for to be auction merch, right? How many of, like, in Mecum, there's guys that have made a living, especially the one in Arizona, the big sales in Arizona, where there's local restoration shops and they just produce cars to sell at the big auctions in Arizona every year. Is that a trend in the really, really high-end market, like what you dabble
I
in?
don't, I don't, I don't know for sure, but from my experience, it seems like it's not. Like when we talk about the cars that are for sale, typically it's direct from the collector. It's not from a shop. I've had a couple shops that call me about certain cars wanting to sell them, and I'm happy to help them. But the ones that have approached me, we couldn't come up with the right numbers on the cars. So I personally haven't had any. They've all been, collectors, and I get the sense that that's most of it. I'm sure there are some that do. I mean, Barrett, I know, is huge, especially in the resto mod world. I mean, you talk about, there's a guy here in Cincinnati. He's known for his resto modded 63 Corvettes. I know Jeff Hayes is a big time guy that restores them. And, if you do a good job and your name's attached to it, and they'll pay that premium. There were two that sold at Barrett, and that's a guy's business is, he does 463 Corvettes a year, sells them at Barrett, no reserve. And that's his whole business. And he has, a staff of maybe 6 guys that work on them.
There was a guy that was really, his restorations were phenomenal. Austin Healy's, do you remember that? He would always have 2 or 3 of those for sale every year at Barrett. And there were quite a few guys that were making a living that way. I hope they still are, because some of the restorations those guys were doing phenomenal, just absolutely phenomenal work.
Oh, my dad bought his Austin Healy that way. There was a guy locally who's doing it, selling them. I'm pretty sure from RM in Monterey, he would build 2 or 3 Heelys a year. And this is the early 2000s. He unfortunately passed away. He was a retired cop who was just a talented restorer. And his retirement business from like his early 50s till I think he passed away in his 70s was restoring Austin Heelys. And he did very well. He was a great guy. But I would say that's, literally that's how my dad got his Austin Healy. We're walking outside the fence of the Portola or whatever it is at Monterey. And he's like, there's my car. And I knew he liked Austin Heelys. I didn't know what model, but it was like 62, 2 BN7, tri-carb, like it checked all the boxes. Tom Rock was sitting there. And it was so funny. It was our first time being involved with an auction. And going back to chandelier bidding, like, my dad and I we're neophytes trying to have like a strategy. We're like, okay, we're only going to go to 40 grand, and then I remember I think he bought it for 42 at the time. And we're looking around like, who the hell's bidding against us? Like, we're like,
Nobody.
My friends are looking. But in the end, I mean, my dad, no poker face, like Tom knew at the beginning, like we spent 2 days there. Like the auction was on Saturday and we're there Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And he knows like, this is the guy who's going to buy the car. And he was great. And here's the funny thing, just a side note. My dad and I are, he goes and gets his cashier's checks, unlike a bring a trailer where like the deal isn't done. That's up to you. Like when you raise your hand, it is sold. They've got your money. So he's getting all these blank cashier's checks or whatever. They're for 10 grand. And he wins it on Saturday. And we're sitting there on Saturday night and Sunday strategizing how we're going to drive this home on Monday, because we came up in one car. Thank God we didn't, because driving a newly restored car, 500 miles home along the coast. We had this, nostalgic idea of what we were doing. And um, we get the car. I tell as soon as he buys it, he goes, "Don't tell your mom. She's going to be pissed." I'm like, "No problem. We'll ship the car to my house in Huntington Beach. And when the timing's right, we'll just do the unveil to her." As soon as we got home, we pull up to the driveway. My dad gets out of the car and he's like, "Hey, honey, I got some news." What do you say? Like, "I got bad news for you. I bought a car." And like, I was sitting there in the car going, "Oh, didn't you learn anything?" But long story short, got the car. It had a problem with the motor. Tom was bitching. He came with his trailer to Huntington Beach, picked it up, had to rebuild the whole motor. Camshaft came loose or the crank came loose, something major. And we're sitting there the whole time going, "Can you imagine if we drove this car, 500 miles down PCH back and it would fail?" Anyway, side note about when you mentioned Austin Healey, it struck an interesting chord with me.
Well, but you're bringing up something that's really important. Freshly restored cars, whether it be from an auction or anywhere else, those are always going to break. Everything about them is going to need tightened up. Or the best way to buy it, it's like what Rod Emery does. He doesn't deliver a car. Well, it's like what Ferrari does, like what every major manufacturer do. They try to put miles on them so that they can fix all the obvious things that weren't, put together right in the first place. So the only thing I have to mention, what I've been watching, is I have a 2019 Speedster, and those cars were selling for like, I always watch Speedsters. Speedsters are fun cars to look at. The 89s are my favorite ones. Those cars seem to have plateaued in terms of value. There seems to be a lot of it really quickly in less than 12 months. You seem to be able, and Greg, you remember when you and I were in California last year, we were outside of the hotel and I was pointing out that Speedster. I think it was a black one. And I was really shocked you guys had it for sale because I thought it was really way too ratty for your auction. And it sold for like monster money. And now you're seeing cars that are way nicer than that. And that car was not a low miles car. I don't remember what it sold for, but it was, it needed a lot of work. Whoever had it did not take care of it. I think it was black too. So in any event, the Speedster prices on the older cars seems to have leveled off. And on the newer ones, the 2019s, there was one that closed for 440. And those cars forever were selling for 380, 390. And this one closed at 440. Plus, with buyer's fees, that's 450. So that's, I think, an interesting trend to keep an eye on. If anyone has one of those, don't sell it, is my, word of advice. So any thoughts on that?
I think that's one of the prettiest of all the Speedsters. I really like was it 19? The look of it. I just think it's such a beautiful car. I'm not as fond of the 89. Sorry, Tim. That's kind of a big ass kind of thing. But yeah, I just think it's cool. I want the gumball though. I don't like the gumball stuff.
Ours is just like that one, except the number is I forget, but it's the gumball stuff too. The
guy who designed our logo did the gumball thing, so it is a controversial the heritage package, right?
Yeah, heritage. We didn't buy it new. We bought it used. We bought that car in 2021, I think. But yeah, and we just got that thing out of its major service, and whew, that was a surprise.
So that's an interesting point. The heritage stuff is somewhat annoying. Here's me being controversial, Tim. Like look at Ford GTs. The Heritage Edition is going through the roof. I mean, they're like low mileage, they're Gulf oil colors. They're the loudest of all the cars when it comes to colors. And, now they're $1 million cars. And so like, look at the car, the Porsche, the car. I mean, who wanted to order that to drive that and look cool at, I mean, it's such a loud package.
I think he's kind of making fun of me, Paul. I'm getting like a you're a wanker vibe right now. Yeah. Whoa.
But like I wanted the car. I want something that's a little more reserved, not all full of stickers and fancy colors and stuff. But I think everybody wants the car because it's a heritage package,
Let me fill in the gaps here. And Paul, if I miss anything, let me know. So what people don't know, what people underappreciate about those cars, and the reason I think those cars, and I have one, so I'm totally biased, but the reason I think they're still massively undervalued is because what it is. So going through the specs on it is a GT3, but it's got the 992 GT3 motor in it. So it's got individual throttle bodies. So the motor itself is not the motor that was in the 991.2 GT3s. It also has, and this is what people never talk about, a lot of 911R parts on it. The front fenders are carbon fiber. The hood is carbon fiber. I have a whole bunch of little, idiosyncratic details that I'm missing. But that car is a best of parts bin car is really what it is. And it's truly special. And the fact that the market will value a 2016 911R where it'll value and all these other things, I believe, and look at ST values, when the new 992, probably point 0.2 Speedster comes out, if you're just looking at the ST prices, you're looking at a car that's probably going to be, I mean, certainly $500,000, maybe $600,000 or $700,000. It's going to be a lease only deal like they did with the STs. So I, I can't buy any car without knowing what my exit plan is in case I find, something else I want to buy. And those cars in particular, I think still have a lot of upside, unlike virtually everything else. And this is actually an interesting pivot on this. The new car flipping game, in my opinion, is completely over. The between inflation and between the manufacturers leaving absolutely no meat on the bone, that world is completely eviscerated. I don't see any of these new cars coming out. If anything, I think they're a little shockingly expensive. You guys have an opinion on that?
No, I agree. I agree. I think this has been the goal of the manufacturers. I think they, especially European manufacturers who don't understand the US dealer network and the fact that they're making the car, they're doing all the heavy lifting and the dealers are making the massive profit, or even worse, the flippers, the speculators. So I think, this was their goal all along. It'll be interesting. I'm sure this ST lease program is sort of a beta test to see, is this another way to protect themselves? But I think the dealer ADMs on those cars were so bad that it discouraged anyone to the point where I think some dealers have been sitting on STs. I think they realize, crap, but they were crazy. There was like a $400,000 ADM, I think, at the one at Palm Springs Porsche. I was like, okay.
Let's just stop there. I have to wrap my mind around this. What's the probability of the next generation special Porsche and the one after that and one after that not essentially being an ST? Zero. They're all going to have do you think Porsche is really going to, what on that car? Didn't the 2016 911R have like a magnesium roof, and wasn't it more special than, maybe I'm thinking of this wrong. But
It's sort of like your Speedster. It got it was a 991.1 base car that got the 991.2 engine, which is a kind of unique.
Are you sure? I'm not sure that's right. I think that 2016 911R,
I think it got the 991.2 engine.
No, I'm pretty sure that's not right. Someone's going to research it. I'd be so happy if Paul was wrong about his Porsche facts. But you guys research it and put it in comments. But I believe one of the reasons that the 2016 911R is so revered is because it had a last of motor in it, a last Metzger type deal. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. And then the 992 and the 991 and 991's 0.1 and 0.2, that GT3 motor was a new platform. I'm pretty sure. Oh, look at that.
Let me clarify. When I said the car, I actually meant the Rothman livery. It's the livery stuff I don't really care for.
Back to that, Greg. What that is basically Porsche marketing.
Yeah.
So the Heritage Pack, there's actually a separate division in, Porsche where they, will tack on a lot of extra bells and whistles. But in the defense of the Heritage Pack, you could have gotten that car with no stickers if you didn't want it. And the interior that they put in that car is phenomenal. But going back to that Speedster in particular, did you guys know that the seats in those cars, so there's the 911 Sport bucket, or GT3 and GT3 RS seats. The ones in that Speedster were 918 seats, which is a different seat, and not very much different, but it's a slightly different design. Going back to the fact that Speedster is really, I think, in my opinion, even at that ridiculous value, is undervalued for the market. So look at Paul. He will not be wrong. He is busily researching. Look at his eyes. Look at his quickly reading.
I know it got the GT3 RS engine in the 911R.
Well, someone's going to correct us. I promise you, especially when we put this on Instagram.
Going back to just really quick on the Speedster, I have never been a fan of the Speedsters in general, just because I don't like convertibles. That's just a personal thing. And it's not the look of the car. I just don't like the sun on me. The 89, I never really liked because I just thought it was a poser package. It looked cool and it just mechanically didn't deliver. I think
You mean mechanically or performance wise? Because mechanically it was all turbo.
Performance wise, it was just an 89 Carrera with flares, and it was heavy and it felt slow, and it just felt like the car you show up to the club in, and that's it. And I look at them and they're, 2x the price of an M491, you know.
Yep.
So you're paying for this low windshield that's impossible to replace, and the crappiest Rue Goldberg design op canopy bullshit. I hate that. Like, when we get one, we'll take the pictures up and down, and thank God we didn't break anything, and we'll never put the top back up again. Because
but you did say something no one ever talks about, and it is true. They only have 217 horsepower, and they do have all the 911 turbo, 930 turbo bits, right? Suspension, brakes, and all the stuff weighs a lot.
You can't go fast enough to use any of
You
it.
can't.
That's the irony of it. But actually, the best Speedsters, I think, and they're underrated, are the 964 Speedsters, because they're built in the ethos of the original Speedster, which is strip the crap out of it. It's a narrow body, which it never did well because it was a narrow body. They made a few special wide body, but the 964 Speedster had the cool Carrera RS seats. They were really lightweight, like significantly lighter weight for what anything Porsche was making at that time, which the 90s was definitely the heaviest time. And then when you get to the 991.2 Speedster, what I liked about it was they finally put the engine in it. Like that, as much as I wasn't a fan of the bustle butt rear end and the heritage package, it was vinyl, take it off, leave it on, who cares? But the best part about that car was it finally got a real engine. Like the 997.2 Speedsters that trade for crazy money, that never had a great engine. They just got the base motor. And like you said, it was a parts bin car. It's like fine. That car's, I don't know how much Andy Pruninger was involved with it, but it just screamed like,
well, it was a GT car. That was a GT car.
That was the reason why. And you look at it, and I've driven one, didn't drive it enough to know like, wow, but I was like, oh, this makes sense, because the individual throttle body engine is just like, you hear it everywhere because you just expose. It's like you're sitting on the engine. So that's a cool car. And as much as I don't like the rear end because it's such a bustle butt big rear end, who cares? You don't see it. You see forward. So
well, it is true. It does look strange from the side. It looks good from one of the angles, So the question that a lot of people ask is, well, if you can get a Spider 17 718 RS, what has the same motor and well, you can wag your head all you want, son. I've got both, and let me tell you, between the two, the Spider RS is actually more of an exhilarating drive. Everyone's going to hate me for saying it, but it's true. Even with the PDK transmission, and the reason is because it makes so many cooler noises, because the engine's right behind your head, and so driving that, even though hypothetically it should be a similar experience, it's really not. They're extraordinarily different. And when you guys drive a 718 RS, then I think you'll agree with me on that statement. Any comments, Paul? Greg?
I'll take the Speedster though. I think in the long run, like you say, the prices are flat, and I think those will be. I think anything 991.2 with the GT based motor is going to be collectible.
100%. I agree. Look, guys, we're at an hour. I'd love to hear. We had some other things on the agenda. I don't want to, tie you guys up for longer. If both of you guys have time, I've got some more questions.
Yeah, I have more time. Yeah.
Okay, Greg, how about you?
Yeah, I got a little more time, and you haven't asked us like the most exciting car thing that happened in the last week.
Okay. Well, if you were to bring that up, it's not like I can't ask it now, so go for it. What's the most exciting?
No.
Well, Greg, I definitely wanted to ask you about your story, how you got into the auction business. I think that's something that we've teased on the past 3 podcasts, and we can. But the problem is if you get Paul talking about rallies, we're going to be on the podcast for another 3 days. So
why don't we tease it for the next one?
Yeah,
we'll keep teasing.
Yeah, let's tease it for the next one. We don't want to cover it in like 5 minutes because it's
okay. Well, so the most exciting thing for you, sir.
So I was down in Florida chasing cars, obviously. Saw some cool stuff. But what was unique and interesting is I went to a little Cars and Coffee at the Villages, which is a huge retirement just huge. It's like 130,000 people now. And my mother-in-law lives down there. And I went to this little Cars and Coffee, 2 of them actually, and a really rare 68.5 Mustang Fastback with a 428 Cobra Jet engine rolled in. And that was the most special car there. There wasn't a lot of Porsches, unfortunately, down in the villages, which I was dismayed to see that. So that was exciting. I am headed to Keels and Wheels in Houston next week. So if anybody's in Houston, hit me up if you want to talk cars, and hopefully I'll find
So
something
what you're
exciting there.
saying is you're hunting for inventory by going to retirement communities. That's very cagey. So
That
so
was
so if you're an
that,
attorney, that'd be one step above ambulance chasing.
Yeah.
that wasn't
And
my
Keels and
intent.
Wheels. Keels and Wheels. This is like an amphibicar, Cars and Coffee.
It's a wooden boat.
Everyone
and
drives
plastic
into the
car.
lake.
Yeah, it's all amphicars. That's all it is.
Oh,
Their
I think
time
he's
has
serious.
come.
No, it's wooden
No.
boats in cars.
Yeah.
So Paul, go ahead. Let's hear you went
Well,
on.
no, we can talk about the rally later. This weekend is the big Luftgekühlt Air Water
Yes.
Show. That's which is part of the reason I've been distracted coming back from the rally. There's going to be 5,000 Porsches. It's kind of open to all Porsches. I know the display's sold out
5,000?
at least,
Oh
and
my gosh.
10,000 plus people. It's going to be at
Wow.
the Costa Mesa Fairgrounds, the Orange County Fairgrounds. I mean, it's becoming like the Lit show. There's just I mean, I've already been the last 2 days, people from out of country coming around. They're here for the show. Friday, there's Overcrest is doing a drive on Friday. I can't participate in that. The Broad Arrow's having their preview auction. All these other people are having dinners and get-togethers. There's a thing at Finish Line Saturday night. The event's Saturday. We're having our open house Lazy Auto Kennel gathering on Sunday, and I'm already exhausted thinking about it. But we have I think our car might be in the Pirelli display. We have our 944 Turbo S faux Dutch police car on display. But it's the best way to describe it. It's like a trade show, kind of like a SEMA for Porsche nerds. Open to the public, though. You know, there's a lot of vendors there. It's the first time Luftgekult's doing vendors, and it's going to be every year in my backyard, which how convenient is that? So part of the reason we've been scrambling to get cars, we sold everything, and we've got 3 or 4 SCs coming in this week. So
Well, you're blessed to sell something, and let's just be honest, there's not a lot of selling necessary. You're just essentially blessed to be able to get the inventory because you've got the reputation and people want to have their cars with you, but the cars pretty much sell themselves. Isn't that true? When was the last time you actually felt like you did something other than make people feel good and do paperwork? Let's just be honest. The cars sell themselves.
The sticky
I
part
wish
is
it was that easy.
it's not the selling, it's the setting expectations for the seller, right?
Is that a problem right now? What's you guys talked about that on 3 or 4 podcasts ago? Is that still an issue over sellers expecting too much? It's always a problem, but
It's always been a problem with me, and it's part of the reason my descriptions have gotten so long, because it's like, here is what the car is. Here's everything I know about it. And they're like, well, can I talk to the owner? I go, I promise you, I know far more than him, because I already asked him questions. He didn't have the answers, and I had to go call the previous owners, previous mechanics. And it's trying to take the hearsay out of the product and actually put the fact back in, because as we know, people go like, oh, it was this and it was this. And next thing you know, 20 years later, this story about the car isn't exactly what the car is.
Let me drill down on the statement I was making. I'm not trying to minimize what you do for a living.
Yeah.
Though it is kind of fun to get you calling yourself a used car dealer. What I'm saying is, emotionally, if someone connects with a car, they almost have to talk themselves out of it after they've already emotionally connected with a car. So really, if the car presents well, and your write-ups on the cars always present well, but if someone sees something and they love it, it's game over at that point. I bet you, I'm going to say this because I'm 100% confident I'm right. There's never been something that someone didn't emotionally connect with, unless they were just buying it for the sake of making money, that you were somehow able to talk them into buying, right? You understand the difference of what I'm saying? It's like in real estate, with our industry, a house sells itself. Unless they're an investor and they want to flip it or whatever, they love it or they don't. And if they don't, it's not like you're going to be. There's no selling to sell something. There's no selling involved, in the sense that you're not talking someone into buying something they don't already want to buy. So people, I think, most sales are essentially setting the stage for people, so people can have a positive emotional response to the product. But at the end of the day, they like it or they don't.
Yeah, no, that's true. One of the first questions I ask people when they come look at a car, or they're really keenly interested, I know it's the right car, is like, how long have you been looking? I mean,
That's 100% a great pre-qualification. Because I mean, that's what we teach people in real estate too. That's
yeah,
brilliant.
it's the same thing. And you see these people like, okay, yeah, this SC, these two, the Carrera and the SC, they're unique-ish, but they're still, if you look hard enough, they're not that rare. You can find one. And when you're buying an old car or an old house or anything, there's always a compromise. It's not quite exactly what you wanted. You decide what's more important. And when I see that they've been looking for a car for like a year, and I'm like, oh, you're never going to buy a car. Like you, you are going to create so many hurdles for yourself. And so I see those people and I watch them, and I watch them get priced out of the market, where maybe they originally were looking for a 993 and then, or a 964, then a 993, and now they're looking at an SC, not because they want an SC, but because that's where their price range is. And I would say the hardest part is helping these people get over the, like, whatever they buy, if they do other due diligence, they'll buy a good car. It won't be perfect. It's an old car. It'll always have needs, but like, just get something, get in the game, start figuring out how you're going to enjoy it. And then, like I said, Greg, I am so excited. I honestly, I don't know what's taking you so long to buy the car, because I think you should buy that SC like today.
I'm just trying to get to see it. That's all I'm trying to do. So hopefully tomorrow afternoon, hopefully next time we have this call, I'll have a different picture behind me.
I can't wait. I really hope so. I mean, and not just because, welcome, come into our, like a vampire, like come into our horde.
No, that is exactly what it is. Don't say it's not like. It is like. It's like a religion. This is the Church of Paul.
It is.
We're going to be talking about 911s. He's the high priest of 911s in particular. You see how quick he shoots down 912s, and he didn't waste any time crapping on my beloved 718 Spider RS. So this is
I
the
didn't crap
Church
on
of
it. I just didn't comment on it. That's all.
Same thing.
Yeah. Absence
Paul,
isn't a no.
Paul, here's you said something. I have to go back to it. When someone says they've been looking for a year, this is what we teach them, and when we're helping agents learn how to pre-qualify. A year, that's interesting. So have you seen anything you've liked in the past 12 months that you're interested in buying? And I'm sure you do this too, naturally. And they'll say, well, yeah, I did see that house, or I did see the house, or I did see that car. And so did you make an offer on that car, or what about that car did you like, and get them talking about? And they said, well, they didn't make an offer. Didn't make an offer. Well, that's interesting. Why didn't you make an offer? And then you're going to get to the real reason that people usually talk themselves out of buying something. They're just looking for a deal. They're looking for just steal something. Like they're going to come across the one seller that's just somehow has their head in the sand, which doesn't exist. And then you ask the question, well, okay, I hear that a lot. When someone says they're looking for a deal, what does a deal mean to you? And you really drill down, and that's how you get to the essence of somebody's just a looker versus an actual buyer. And in your world, you got to be dealing with probably 90% lookers. You have to, because there's such a passion thing. But yeah, so anyway.
Or they really want to just drive an old car and see if they like it. And I'm like, oh, this is not the place to do that. This is the place to validate it is what you think it is. The only way you're going to know and like, the irony is, test driving an old 911 and basing your decision on that, forget it.
If you've never driven an old car before, let alone an old 911, well, hold on. This isn't a good question for Mr. Greg there. Have you driven an old 911? Have you actually driven one of these?
I have. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So, it's been a while.
Long?
But I'm gonna
a long drive?
No, probably 10 minutes. Nothing super long. So.
Well, you better drive it first, because you could actually not. There could be some, I don't know. I mean, sometimes people really dislike the old 911s because the way the pedals come off it comes off they don't come off the floor. They come off the firewall, basically. There's so many little idiosyncratic things. You just better make sure you're comfortable driving it.
Don't listen to Tim. No matter what, if you just do your due diligence, buy a good car, you will learn to love to drive that car. It will work. I have never met anyone. The only reason they didn't like driving a 911 is because they bought a crappy one and didn't drive well. But if you buy a good one and it drives well, you are going to, love the car. You will love driving it.
Okay. So you think anybody, even if they've only driven new cars, this is very fascinating, I think. Yep. You think anybody, you put their butts in, even if like a vintage 911, you think they're just going to fall in love with it and everything else is going to be second.
if they already like vintage cars. Now, some people who just don't like vintage cars, they try to like vintage cars because social media says your life will be better if you like a vintage car and own one. But there's some people that doesn't qualify. But if you actually love driving old cars, like Greg, he's got 2 old cars back there. He's driven lots of old cars. He likes old cars. If you like old cars, and I used to joke with my BMW friends when we were club racing, I go, the only reason you're racing a BMW is you haven't driven a Porsche yet. And if you do that, because at the time I was racing a BMW, but driving on the street Porsches, and I was like, damn, these are such better cars. Like these are good, these are better. You know, the Porsche is better than the BMW. And I think that, you know, I joke with my Alpha friends. I mean, Alphas are lovely cars, but they're just built like crap. And if you drove a German car, especially a Porsche, the problem with Porsches is I don't think they're inherently beautiful cars like Italian cars. They don't make the sounds that some of the Italian cars. We're like, oh, that sounds great for a Porsche. You know, whereas Ferraris and Alphas all sound great. They look
Well, the
beautiful.
problem is you set the bar so high, and he's going to go drive his, Pontiac there, and I guess that'll be an improvement, right? The SC is definitely going to be better than the Pontiac. God bless the Pontiac. But then he's going to get into it. It's going to be the shifter. It's going to, even if the bushings are perfect, it's going to feel, like the 915s do. And then it's not going to have that much torque because it's a 180 horsepower. Well, it'll feel torquey, but not that much power. I mean, so that's a thing.
Greg, don't worry. We'll do
No,
cosmetic
yeah.
surgery. We'll physically alter your body to work with a 911. You'll love it.
Well, I did a whole podcast called "The Problem with Porsches" when I compared it to driving my 996 back when I had it. Is it resets your, it recalibrates your brain on what you want. And after I got that 996, I didn't want a muscle car. Well, I ended up with the ultimate muscle car, the GTO, because it was such a car. It was such a find. I had to buy it, right? And so, I mean, I had my wife's '05 Boxster S. Love that little thing. So,
Well, there is a huge difference between the cars
oh,
that the 993, well, not even really 993, but the older Porsche products, that is a completely different, it. I agree. I mean, we have that. I put it on Instagram. We have that blue, RSR. It's based on a 72, all metal. It's got who's that really? I forget. Down San Diego, Jay. He builds those really.
Jay Lee.
Yeah. So he built the motor in this one. He's the one. Did you know that he was the one that was building the Cosworth motors for Singer? So it's got one of these J. Lee motors in it, which are an arm and a leg. All the right things. And when I drive that car, there is really nothing. I feel that car makes me feel special when I drive it, especially when the motor's warmed up and driving on one of these roads around Smoky Mountains. It is really truly something special. So Greg, I am looking forward to you sharing with all of us and sharing the listeners. No peer pressure here, brother. When you get that SC, because it will be pretty magical. And then you can talk to different people about what you might want to do to set the suspension up right, maybe put 9-inch wheels in the back. Different things like that can add a lot of enjoyment.
Yeah. No. Awesome.
Yeah.
I'll keep you all updated.
All right, cool. So thank you for listening today. Hopefully we didn't intend for it to be a 911 show, but that is kind of a tendency of, well, I have to admit though, when we were designing the logo is a 911, tachometer at an angle. So maybe subconsciously it was always inevitably going to be Porsche heavy anyway. So next week we'll try to have a more balanced show, but we'll probably fail at that. In the meantime, I will suggest everyone be on the lookout. There is a huge Ferrari announcement that's happening at 2 p.m. Central Time on April 29th. Our show today comes out tomorrow, so you guys can all look forward to it. It is the announcement, the official images of the new 296, the Ferrari 296 version Speciale. I'm saying the second word wrong, but it's the Pista, the Scuderia version of the current
Halo
engine.
car.
The Halo car, you're right, for the 296s. And that one's being announced on the 29th. So hopefully I'll steer conversation away from 911s next week, probably fail at it. But in the meantime, thank you for listening. The podcast continues, the video and the YouTube version and our podcast version continues to surprise all of us. And I'm really liking the fact that we're finding our audience in that we're not trying to appeal to too many people, really drilling down on the things that we're all passionate for. It's fun to watch Greg on his journey as he's kind of being, going to the Church of Paul with regards to 911s. Yeah, I was already there, frankly,
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for Greg.
Exactly.
I need to check the air cooled Porsche box, you know, for sure. So
You do. And there's lots of really talented Porsche mechanics in your part of Ohio too, for sure.
Yeah.
And certainly up in Central Ohio as well. All right. So on behalf
going back to the full cockroach thing, you know, once you check in, you don't check out.
Okay.
That's a perfect place to end the show for today. You guys have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show next week.